Hello there, welcome to the Saroy channel. I've got a wonderful story for you today and you're really going to enjoy it, and I'm so delighted that you're joining me again this evening. It's so wonderful to have listeners like you and I appreciate every single one of you. So let's get started. The story comes from the Central Oregon forests all the way from Jennifer. Let's get started. I'm 67 years old. And my Bigfoot experience happened 2 years ago on the 13th of June 2019. I drive a camper van that was converted into a beautiful portable home for me by a brilliant carpenter who specializes in personalizing camper vans. I drive a Fiat Ducato Maxi 2016 and I just travel all around North America. After my husband sadly died 5 years ago, I decided to buy my own camper van and spend the rest of my life traveling around and enjoying all the sights and sounds and meeting so many different people from different walks of life. My life has been transformed and changed forever. I never worry anymore about anything, and I just go with the flow and see what life has to offer me every single day. I definitely recommend this lifestyle to any of your listeners who fancy an adventurous life full of surprises and so many learning experiences. Most of my time in the camper van has been wonderful. I have stayed in some beautiful places, and every year I would always go to one of my favorite spots. Sadly, I can't tell you or your listeners where it is because a lady is entitled to have her secret places if you don't mind. I will tell you this, if it is situated in one of the beautiful forestal areas in Central Oregon, with cascading waterfalls, pools of moving water, and wonderful animal life. I forgot to mention I have a beautiful miniature pinscher called Maximilian. Strange name, I know. I call him Maxie for short. Anyway, he's the best dog to have on the road because he just loves it. He is made for this kind of lifestyle and he's a real companion of mine. Anyway, let's not get off topic. I'm sure your listeners want to hear all about my Bigfoot encounter. I remember it was very early in the morning when I woke up. I do not know why I woke up, but something roused me. Even Maxie was still fast asleep, snoring loudly. When I say morning, it was still dark outside the camper van, but you could tell that the sun would soon start to rise. I could hear the sound of what sounded like two people chattering in a foreign language at the river. I'm a little bit of a nosy Parker. I don't mind admitting it. I've never been a gossip though, but I always do want to know what's going on around me. And yes, I do want to see who the people were who were having a conversation together and why they were up so early. Maybe they'd gone for a dip or a stroll around the lake, who knows? I did wonder if there was another camper van nearby. Maybe someone had pulled up into the forest clearing last night and they were parked close to me. I sincerely hope not, because I wanted this location greedily all to myself, and I make no apologies for that. Anyway, I silently crept out of my camper van, armed with my binoculars, and I tiptoed to a nearby tree, surrounded by some mossy overgrowth that clung to the branches, providing a very decent hiding spot. I think it was a very old redwood tree. I focused my binoculars on the water and surveyed the lake, and then I saw the back view of two dark figures playing in the water together. They were chasing each other in the water and throwing pebbles at each other, having so much fun. It looked extremely impractical because the weather was not cold and they were wearing these wool-like wetsuits. In other words, the wetsuits looked way too warm for them. Then in shock I realized that these were not wetsuits, but it was dark hair that they were wearing. Could I be looking at bears? Surely not. I'd never seen them play in a human way before. It was then that I saw the hugest creature that I have ever seen in my entire life, as he walked through the undergrowth in thunderous huge strides. It seems as if the trees and the brushes buckled beneath him as he walked. He was an impressive-looking specimen, not pretty, but very definitely powerful and strong. I felt like I was looking at an intimidating creature, like a huge lion or a tiger. He looked as if he was 1,000 pounds in weight, and he was at least 10.5 feet tall, and his body was covered with fine grey hair. There was something about the way he moved that reminded me of the great apes that Dian Fossey worked with all those years ago. Only this creature was much more human-looking than pure ape, but he was also not human. I guess he just reminded me of all that evolution stuff we learnt at school, and those so-called pictures of early man, whether they're true or not, of course. This great big hefty creature rubbed his whole behind and his entire back against the trunk of the tree to give himself a really good scratch. Then he finally scratched his head rigorously with what looked like the edge of a piece of bark, which then he threw down the bank. He finally sat down on the bank side, watching his children playing and making pleasurable grunting sounds that sounded a bit like As soon as they saw their father, the two juvenile Sasquatches came out of the water. I assume they were Sasquatches because I guessed by now that that is what they must have been, and they were shaking their coats like a shaggy dog would. Then all three of them got up and disappeared into the brush so fast. I reflected on what I had seen and even made a rough sketch, not that I'm any great artist by any means. I had drawn the cone-shaped head with no neck, wide shoulders, tapering to narrow hips, then tapering down to streamlined muscular legs. They all had deep-set eyes, a brow ridge, a leathery area of skin on their faces like rhino skin. Oh yes, and their noses were very big and flat. Anyway, after my experience, I felt very blessed, I really did, like a person would on a wildlife safari, watching a spectacular scene, like a lion taking down an impala or something like that. You would think I would be rattled and incredibly afraid, but I truly wasn't. I was in total awe about what I had just seen. Yet I knew that much as I would admire a hippo and a rhino or lion from afar, I definitely would not want to get up close and personal with any of them, nor with this creature. I would definitely say that they could all be very dangerous, including these Bigfoots. Luckily, I was not on the receiving end of his wrath, but to put it this way, I wonder how that big Bigfoot would have reacted should he have seen me. I hate to think. It was for that reason that after a quick breakfast, I made fast, hasty tracks out of the Orlando forest. I was not about to risk spending the night there. I knew if those Sasquatches were close by, they would discover my camper van, and who knows what they would do. I didn't want to be here to find out. I do love my camper van very much, and I don't want to risk anything happening to it because it is my life, with my little minpin. I want to mention I did not smell the horrible smells that people talk about and associate with Sasquatches, but then maybe I wasn't close enough. In the binoculars, I did notice that their coats were pretty tangled and matted, like they really needed a good brush, and certainly a trip to the beauty parlour. Jokes aside, I do hope your listeners like my story. Much love to you and your listeners. And by the way, keep my details confidential. With many, many thanks to you and love to your listeners. Thank you so much for that wonderful, wonderful story. Until next time, good night.